Builds have changed now that Lightfall is here, and I'm excited. Of course, as with every Destiny expansion, you'll have new toys to play with, and Strand is the latest in our Cosmic Power color wheel, and I've been very busy seeing what horrors Strand Warlock can get up to. I may have a full-time job, but that hasn't stopped me from testing out all of the fragments that I can get my hands on, so reap the benefit of my hindsight with this week 1 build. Let's keep it straightforward. You'll want a Strand primary and the only Strand heavy weapon that I know of, Circular Logic, which is a terminal overload machine gun specifically dropping from the Zephyr Concourse variant. These are the go-tos thanks to the Strand Surge mod and the Thread of Propagation fragment, which gives unraveling rounds to Strand weapons on melee kills. Not a big ask, since Strand Warlock comes with 3 melee charges out of the box. On top of the native anti-barrier properties that unraveling rounds have, they cause enemies to release tiny Strand Seekers that attack other nearby enemies in the same fashion as Outbreak Perfected's Nanite Swarms. As for the rest of the subclass, we're still fairly limited. You'll have to take Mindspun, Invocation, and Weaver's Call as your aspects, and I know it's heresy thanks to how fun Grapple is, but Threadlink Grenade is the correct pick. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. At least it looks tasty when you consume it for a full perch of Threadlings. Those Threadlings are worth giving up the grapple, and the reason for that is the new Pajama Pants exotic, Swarmers. 2 simple sentences to describe what these do is not enough. Your Threadlings spread Unravel, and destroying Tangles spawns Threadlings. What it doesn't say is that unraveled enemies make Tangles on death with a 15-second cooldown. So grab those, eat them, continue on, or shoot them to create Threadlings at a distance. The amount of utility and damage these pants bring to the table can't be understated. If you don't have them yet and need a replacement, try the Stag or Vesper of Radius, since your Rift makes Threadlings on cast with Weaver's Call, but nothing can really replace Swarmers. So that establishes the identity of the build. To complete the subclass, let's go over the other fragments. 4 slots goes a long way for these. 1 is reserved for Propagation, as mentioned earlier, and another is reserved for Thread of Evolution for meaner, greener Threadlings. In the other 2 slots, however, there is competition. Thread of Rebirth for Threadling spawns on Strand weapon kills sounds perfect, but only happens every 3 kills or so. It's not often enough, I'll pass. Thread of Generation sounds great for extra Threadlings through grenades, but it's not as effective as I hoped. It's a soft maybe. If you're using something that hits multiple things at once, like Tikus, this gets a lot better. Neither of these meaningfully increased the amount of Threadlings I had available, so I decided to focus on survivability instead. Bungie did just make the game harder after all. Slot 3 goes to Thread of Isolation. Severing targets from rapid precision shots is perfect, since anything that survives that long is dangerous, and severing decreases their damage output. It also doesn't require a Strand weapon to work, so beefy targets become a lot less menacing. Slot 4 goes to Thread of Warding. Woven Mail is a substantial damage resistance buff, and you'll want to be making Orbs of Power anyway thanks to the Lightfall mod changes. Speaking of, a lot has changed about that system, but there's nothing stopping you from keeping it simple, and that might even be the optimal choice. Week 1, remember. In my opinion, the meta has changed. Where Font of Wisdom crawled, now fonts of Vigor, Focus, Endurance, and Restoration stand proud. To simplify the new system, picking up an Orb of Power grants 1 armor charge up to a max of 4. Yellow mods eat charges when you perform a certain action. Blue mods make those charges instead last 10 seconds each in return for passive benefits. Multiple blue mods does not accelerate that timer. You can modify each of those properties with other mods. Charged Up will increase how many armor charges you can carry at once up to a hard cap of 6. Stacks on Stacks will make each orb count double for 2 charges each. And Time Dilation will increase the timer from 10 to 15, 18, or maxing at 20 seconds if you equip up to 3 copies. Here's my straightforward mod setup. Make any of your stats hit 50. Put on the font mod that matches to add the other 50 while armor charged. In my case, I've maximized the system so that 1 orb gives 2 charges, which each last for 20 seconds, up to 5 charges at once, which each maximize my Discipline, Strength, Resilience, and Intellect for that duration. I'm also wearing 2 copies of Strand Weapon Surge, the replacement for Font of Might. That gives me an effective 40 seconds per orb pickup, capping at 100 seconds. That's more than enough time to grab more orbs from multi-kills with the Siphon mods in the helmet slot. Basically, picking up an orb makes all of my stats max out and gives me a damage bonus with strand weapons, which make orbs on multi-kills. A very simple, self-fulfilling buff setup. There are other options that seem fun, like double empowered finish with stacks on stacks to get 3 charges per finisher, and yellow mods to cash them back out with that very same finisher. But I think that setup works best with more specific builds focused on one particular ability. I'll look into it and get back to you. For gameplay style, this build is excellent at dealing with crowds in its neutral game, and dealing with bosses by spamming threadlings, severing with precision shots, and using the super. Said super does much more damage than I expected, and deploys threadlings of its own for follow-up damage, so you shouldn't fall behind during DPS phases. I think this build functions very well in environments where enemies are scary and or you are underpowered. In boss damage situations specifically, Cloud Strike should work nicely as an exotic in your energy slot, proccing its lightning storms and severing bosses that shoot back. If we get more strand power weapons like a linear fusion, that would do great work as well. Eat your grenade, cast your rift, and watch 8 threadlings move as a wave to solve your problems. They're like little angry arc traces. I hope you enjoyed this week 1 setup primer. My hope is that Bungie expands on both the mod and subclass fronts so that I can look back on this build in 6 months with pity, like I do for my earlier videos. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you around.